I read a fan's books and it was one of the most insane experiences I've ever had with a book. Now, let's talk about it. Now, this was not a book I had any plans to read at all, even though this author apparently has sent me already 2 emails asking me to read his book, and he's even a patron of mine. And no, I did not read this book because he joined my Patreon. He actually asked if I wanted to check it out, and I said I couldn't make any promises I would ever get to it. So, why did I pick up this unknown book and start reading it? Don't worry, I will reveal the name of the book soon. Well, it's actually all thanks to Malassen. I am sorry, Malassen fans, but I'm at page around 650 at Deadhouse Gates, and I just really felt like I needed a break, so I opened up my Kindle and thought, let's give the prologue a read of this book and see what the writing is like, and the rest is history. I read this book in 3 days and I couldn't stop because it was just so addictive. So let's talk about this book I've been hinting out and discuss whether you should read this book or not. Now, the book I'm talking about is The Sealed Empire by Norbert Siewiczek. I am definitely butchering that name, and it was originally written in Hungarian. Now, the amount of effort put into this book is pretty mad considering it's a self-published book. Firstly, this book has some of the best cover art I've ever come across in the self-publishing community. I mean, just look at it, it's absolutely incredible. And then secondly, the author got the same person who apparently translated the Game of Thrones series from English to Hungarian to translate his book to English. So, I mean, the amount of money this author has put into this book is truly impressive. Now, this book also has won an award in Hungary, so it does have some readers back home where he is from, so already before going into this book, you will know that at least the author has tried to really put a lot of effort into making this as good as possible. But it always makes me a bit scared when I see a book on Goodreads have less than 20 ratings, because usually that rating will not be that reliable due to the very low amount of ratings and reviews. But enough waffling, let's talk about why I'm talking about this book in the first place, and we will start with the good before turning on to the bad later on. Now, firstly, this book has without a doubt one of the most insane endings I have ever come across in fantasy, period. I mean, I really don't want to spoil it, so I won't say anything, but oh man, it is insane to see where this book starts and where it ends. I mean, it is just literally so crazy. Now, I will get into some more details later, but spoiler free, this book is a medieval fantasy, but it has some, let's just say, crazy use of sci-fi elements, and you don't really get to explore those elements until the later half of this book, but oh man, it is just so fascinating. So that is definitely the first point, and that is that this book, and especially the very last act, brings something very new to the table. Now, the author, he pulls off this outrageous ending, but I'm unsure what I think about it, which is probably a good thing, because this book has definitely stayed with me. But yeah, the conclusion of The Sealed Empire is without a doubt one of the most insane endings I've ever come across. Now, secondly, what I loved about this book, and I don't know how to explain it, but it was just such an addictive read. Yes, there are some things that are maybe not executed perfectly, but I just found myself constantly turning the pages because I just felt so immersed in what was happening. I really needed to know what was going to happen, and in some ways, this book gave me similar vibes as Illborn did by Daniel T. Jackson, which is one of my favorite books, because that book also gave me that addictive experience when reading a book. Now, in The Sealed Empire, there are multiple POVs, and I thought it was fascinating because some of the POVs are very traditional medieval fantasy, and then you have this other POV which kind of reads like a psychological thriller almost, that turns sci-fi later on, and then you have some really wonderful underdogs, which I'm always a fan of. Now, the third thing I absolutely loved is the pacing. I mean, the pacing is absolutely riveting, and then you have also very accessible writing style, which just leads to a very fast-paced read. Now, every single page added more questions, or intrigue, or plot twist, which I think is a key reason why I think this is actually a perfect book to read between bigger series, or even if you're falling into a reading slump, because I picked this up when I was really close to falling into a reading slump, and I think that's one of the primary reasons probably why I love this so much, because even though there are several things in this book which aren't executed that well, which usually would have bothered me immensely, that didn't bother me at all here. There's just something about reading a book that has very accessible writing style and that is extremely fast paced that just allowed me to get so immersed and also pulled me out of this potential reading slump. So is this a fantasy masterpiece? I mean, no it isn't, but it is an incredibly enjoyable read, so it's definitely worth checking out. But let's turn to some critiques, because this book is definitely not perfect. And firstly, yes, the ending in this book is absolutely mad and insane, but the sad part is that I'm very unsure if I will actually enjoy the later books now. Yes, the ending clearly tells me that there is more to this story to be told, because I still have questions, but I'm not sure if I'll be that interested in the answers, if I'm honest. It is one of those situations that actually, if the author doesn't explain everything, then that might actually make me appreciate the book more, because then we have more to talk about, if that makes any sense. You know, sometimes the reason, for example, people love a character is because there is so much intrigue about this one character. And what usually happens is that if people love this character, we will maybe get a prequel series for this one character, right? And what happens usually when we get a prequel series? We get all the answers about why this character seems to be so mysterious, and suddenly there's no mystery anymore, and we might not even love that character as much. You understand what I'm saying here? I'm really worried that if I read the future books in this series, then that intrigue will disappear. And you know what? This book reads very much like a standalone, so you don't really have to read the sequels if you don't want to. Now also, the parts I loved the most about this book were set in a medieval setting. And due to things I won't mention here because of spoilers, it seems like the medieval aspect is going to be potentially very limited going forward. But I suppose we will just have to see about that. Now secondly, and this is not necessarily a critique, but the prose is very plain and accessible. I mean, if you enjoy beautiful prose, then you won't find it here, because the prose is just quite simple. And then thirdly, there were some things in this book that felt a bit cliche or cheesy, where I was just thinking, that could have been handled a bit better. But I think I was just at a point when I picked up this book where I just didn't want to be overly critical. I just wanted to enjoy the story as it is, and I'm really glad I did, because I did have a wonderful experience and overall a really great time. And I must also mention though that there are some trigger warnings here, such as abuse, both verbal and abuse in this novel, so if you don't handle that well, then definitely stay away from this book, because it gets quite brutal in some parts. But this abuse actually allowed the author to create one of the most despicable villains I've come across in fantasy in recent times. I mean, the villain in this book is absolutely horrendous. But yeah, I read some really solid self-published books this year, and I don't talk about it that often, so I thought I should give some love to a book I recently enjoyed. So I'm giving The Sealed Empire 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely recommend it if you want to read a fast-paced story with a very interesting ending. It would be great fun for me if some of you pick up this book and let me know your thoughts on the ending of this book, because there is so much to talk about. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, a special thanks to my patrons for support I do here. I really appreciate it.